Hello.
Hello.
Volunteer to drive this meeting, for better or worse. So feel free to continue to add topics. In the meantime, I'll just get started. I put something really pithy and pointless at the top that we can talk about while people are still filtering in. Let me share my screen, I guess. And that is basically, we have this link in our agenda document that points to some other document, which seems to be hopelessly out of date, owned by Bernd Krenich. It's here. So can we remove this? It doesn't seem useful. Anybody object? It also looks from the text like this is supposed to be a link to the CF for Case channel.
That's the wrong channel, right?
Is it?
Shouldn't it be CF Kate's dev now?
Oh, yes, right. Yeah, that's it. I think I did actually put a link to the CH Kate's dev. Below. Well, I'll fix the formatting in a bit.
I'm curious about the premise of this line even. Like nobody adds topics there. They add topics to the future topics thing. I think in CF for Cade's back for that SIG call, there was like a bot that would like post everything and say add topics for next week's SIG call. And that's what this was referring to.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe we don't need this link at all.
Just get rid of it then. It's disturbing red.
Yeah. Okay. We have a nice future topics header, so that's clear enough. Okay.
And maybe we can pin a link to this document on the CFK's dev or maybe Korifi dev channel for easy access.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. So there's a thread here. Oh no, that's the updates. No, thank you. Probably should do this offline, but yeah, now it is pinned. Good. And we should probably move on. Yesterday, Dave and I noticed that we don't seem to be doing any validation of our API configurations. So we load configuration and then we just take the settings and we try and start the API shim deployment. Presumably, if your configuration is terribly wrong, bad things will happen. Your API shim won't start up, but we don't have a lot of confidence that we're going to give useful error messages to people. So we tossed an issue into the backlog to go add some validations and maybe make nice error messages. We thought we should bring it up here just in case anybody had any thoughts or opinions.
Seems reasonable and good. So
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
can't think of any reason not to.
You know, I'm not positive that that was the thing that we wanted to discuss in this meeting, because I felt like whatever it was more controversial than that, but that was the only thing I could remember. So yeah, we also noticed we don't do any unit testing of that code, so we thought while we're at it, we should add some unit tests, but that is even less controversial, I think. So I will take notes. Right. Moving on. Georgi, looks like you're next with the release.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things and pretty much synchronize on the release and what's left. So basically we're almost done. Like the milestone is almost complete. A big thanks to American people who offered their hand, because we're a little bit understaffed right now with Giuseppe out ill and all that. So in my personal view, there are just a few things that are left. One thing is that we're currently working on trimming the role of the service account that's running the shim to take out all permissions. We're not done with this yet. There are also the two documents, the contributing and the installation markdown. So the installation doc is probably going to be contributed by Ioannis, I don't remember the exact name, Stark and Wayne employee, who is in touch with us. We pretty much gave him a preview, basically a script that installs a release. Together with a tarball of the release, we prepared a pipeline that builds the tarball so that we can do the release when we feel that we're ready. And another major point before we release is the Korifi rename, which was a big thing, which is kind of half done right now, or maybe it's actually already done, because maybe the only thing that's left is renaming the domain, which I don't think should be blocking the release. So I commented in that story, and we'll probably spin a chart to do that after the release, because users of the product will not care about RCI, Vault, etc., and its domains. But something that I came across while reviewing those renaming PRs was the CF-CLI has a config section that's called something like CF on Kates enabled, true or false. So I wanted to bring it up. Do we want to rename that before we release? Do we care actually at all? It's somewhat internal, but I wanted to hear some thoughts on this, because if we do want to rename it, we'll have to open a PR. We'll have to wait for release of the CLI. So, any thoughts on that?
If we release before we change the CF on Kates enabled setting in the config, that would be a bit grim, that we would have to support CF on Kates settings and Korifi setting, because we would probably want to be backwards compatible, which is going to be very annoying. Or maybe we just don't want to be backwards compatible, then it's fine.
Maybe at this point we're not very much concerned. Like, it's a beta, it's a 0.1.0. It's going to be 0.1.0. So I think we can probably make breaking changes, and also we can choose to never do it. I mean, if we decide that it's not user facing and we don't care, we can just leave it like that forever, and then we are backwards compatible. After all, it is CF on Kates. It's just called Korifi.
Imagine in 20 years, someone asking what's CFOnkate.
I mean, so this, we're talking about a line in the CLI's config file, right?
Yeah,
That's like just like internal and not user facing.
exactly.
And the backwards incompatibility here is you would have to re-log in, I think, if we change the name to the API, right? Like,
Not only you're not going to be able to use older versions of the CLI. So what I'm saying is that you deploy 1.0.0.1 and you pick your CFCLI to work with it, and then you bump to 0.2 and your CFCLI doesn't work anymore because it expects the new property.
oh, it's something on our info endpoint that we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, it's the
Isn't
flag in the response for the root endpoint that tells the CLI, oh, you're dealing with Kubernetes, so do your auth differently.
Actually, now that I think about it, I think CF on Kates, it's not that bad of a name in the config because it's informing the CF CLI, which is CF, that is dealing with Kates. So maybe, I mean, apart from it being internal, maybe it's not controversial at all.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel, because like it's an info endpoint, and I don't know, Korifi enabled true also feels weird there. It's more like, are we backed by Kubernetes or not?
Yeah.
But
this also has the very big advantage of not having to block the release on yet another thing. So I think that's probably a good choice. Cool. Yeah, I was kind of leaning towards this anyway because I didn't want to block anything. Yeah, I guess if someone, one thing that I wanted to point out, like in terms of the rename and the domains, I think it's wise to not touch the domain, not touch Concourse, and not touch Vault until we release, because we're going to release using the pipeline, which uses Vault. So let's just make sure we don't disturb these systems. And after we release, we can pick up a chart to switch the domains. That's not user facing. So let's not, let's not get ourselves into trouble too early.
especially because we're still like the CF on Kate's working group. So like Cloud Foundry, CF for VMs is like maintained by a bunch of relent pipelines, and those domains are like relent and random stuff. So like the CI domain doesn't necessarily need to match.
Yeah. And also, if we're going to change domains of Concourse and Vault, I don't know, but it might mean that we need to restart these systems, redeploy them. I would prefer it to be persistent first and to be able to auto-unseal itself. So we have charts for that, and I guess we'll deal with that first, and then we can switch the domains. I just wanted to raise it so that no one does it, because if we crush CI right now, it would be a bit annoying. And yeah, the other thing is pretty much, can anyone think of anything else that we need before the release?
I would like to piggyback on that topic. So while working on the release pipeline, we asked ourselves, what are we actually going to release? So at the end, we decided that provided that we're currently not going to release Helm charts or whatever that's customizable, our release should include the YAMLs that are deployable on a local kind cluster. This means that anyone would be able to deploy it on their local kind cluster, give it a try, whatever. If they want to deploy it anywhere else, they would probably have to bash the YAML somehow or apply some YTT transformations, for example, but that's on their own. We thought that this is a reasonable approach because we currently don't have the means to have, for example, values files which you can change. And we also hacked a sample script which deploys such a release tarball on a kind cluster. It actually creates the kind cluster and deploys it, which internally calls our install dependency script and so on and so forth. We put it in the samples directory because we don't want to commit on maintaining it and guaranteeing that it still works. It's more or less like an example how to deploy it. This was our idea. I wonder whether you have thoughts on that.
So if we release if our release is a set of YAMLs and maybe some scripts, then that would mean the corresponding container images are just sitting on Docker somewhere, or?
Yeah. The release pipeline is going to push the Docker images on Docker Hub. Currently, this is done in our test accounts because we're lacking permissions of the Cloud Foundry Docker team or something like this, but we're going to sort it out. But the main thing is that the release tarball is only going to contain YAMLs. That's it. They're going to reference the proper Docker images, yes. But if you want to configure, for example, namespaces, secrets, whatever, you're on your own.
And that's why we have the install doc, right? Because it will advise what you need to do in order to make the thing run. Like you need to create certain secrets, put them in there, and then apply. You also need to install the prerequisites like HNC and others, or you can use our hack script that just does everything if you're impatient or something. And so we thought a good thing to release will be something that can run standalone, like local registry, the local registry backed thing that we're deploying against on kind. So that's what we release. And then if you want to deploy it in another way and tweak the YAMLs, you're free to do so.
Yeah, I guess I wonder if anybody would actually consume a tarball just having some YAMLs. I'm a little skeptical, as opposed to like just grabbing the tag of the release from GitHub and running a script, right?
Yeah, I don't know about it, because then you'll need to reconstruct the whole YAML with all the roles, right? Everything's bundled in these YAMLs, not just the deployment. And even if it was just a deployment, then some mounts and stuff. It's like a reference thing. Like, for example, HNC are releasing a YAML you can just apply when it runs. So I guess.
Yeah, basically the release is the reference YAMLs applied with the kind with local registry overlay.
Yeah.
That's what you get.
And the local registry is so that you can make the thing run and try it. Otherwise, you'll need to create accounts, and I mean, it will be much bigger of a mess. I mean, I guess that's what the story asked for, right? Giuseppe wrote a story about prepare release. And I guess that's it. Zip the YAML, stack the images.
Okay.
So, but then the question arises, because we're using these three of customizations, which one do we release? And I think the most reasonable one is the local registry one, so that you can at least run it and it does something useful. So yeah, I guess if you feel like this is not the right choice, speak up. Sounds like it might be the right choice.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, that's probably it really. And then the last thing is, when do we do the release? But I guess after we are done with everything, we just wait for someone to. We either just cut it, or maybe we consult with Eric or someone saying when they want it. Also, in terms of release notes, I don't know, like we probably don't need to wait for Giuseppe to be back in, so maybe some help from the American side would be appreciated for like before publishing the draft, whenever we get to it.
What specifically do we need there? Just like known issues, or?
Not really sure, that's the thing. I guess Giuseppe probably had a plan. I never thought about it, but now if he's going to be out and we want to release it quickly, I mean, I would even wait for him to get back and talk it through, but if someone says that it's more urgent to get the release out, we don't need to wait. We just need to cut it, decide what to put in the release notes, publish, that's it.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine just putting a note in saying, hey, this only works on kind. Otherwise, you're going to need to change the YAML. Something.
Yeah.
I mean, generally, release notes are short until you find some reason why they have to be long, right?
Yeah. And we have no other previous releases, so maybe some general description, that's it.
Okay.
Release note could say, look man, CF on Kates.
Right. All right. Well, if there's nothing else on the release, I guess we'll move on to logo. Do we know what the next step is? I think maybe this is a question for Chris.
Well, I would, as in most things, I will leave the hard work to you all. And I've given you these logos. This is my first time working with LF Creative Services, and I think they did a pretty good job. I did follow up with them on Friday, and I asked them to do a couple tweaks, like, what did I say? I asked them to do a few more things because it's always good to make the decision-making even harder. Yeah, so I asked them to do 1A with the Cloud Foundry font logo from 2A, and I asked them to do 1A with the mountain from concept 3, but with the gear. And I asked them to do 2B from the uppercase 1B Korifi font, and likewise 1B with the lowercase 2B Korifi font. And then I also asked them that they implement concept 2A with a 7-pointed gear as opposed to the 8-pointed gear. So basically, I just tried to go through the comments and various things that seemed popular or that people were inclined to do. I asked them to do a few more things. I'm not surprised they didn't get back to me because that was, Friday before Easter weekend. Now it's Tuesday. So, I hope to have a few more things, but I'll leave the difficult job of deciding on the actual logo to the working group. How you want to do that? You've voted on the name in the past if you want to do that, but this is sort of tricky. I also don't think, lots of them are pretty good. I don't think this is, I don't want to belabor you all too much on this thing. However, you'll all get some t-shirts pretty soon with this logo on them. So I want you to like it too. So yeah, like I said, I will defer this difficult job of deciding on the logo to you all. But just let me know once the decision's been made, and I'll make it so, and I'll get you some swag, and we can work. The next step then too is updating the website and putting some technical docs and things like that up, and we'll want the logo ready for that. So this is something we should prioritize, but I don't think you need to focus too much on this, and I don't want it to hold up the release.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, probably we're gonna need to do some kind of voting after we get the graphics, the various extra graphics you've requested.
Right, and in like a ranked choice voting would make sense in this situation. I believe to use that for the naming as well.
Yeah,
Could be
Right.
wrong. So
I think it should be pretty easy to pull off another vote because we already have the formulas and all that.
yeah, so if you want to use the exact same approach you did for settling on the name, I think that's a good way to go. And I'll hopefully get that back from them. I can follow up tomorrow or so, but I'll hopefully get that back from them later this week, and then people can put in ranked choice votes, and then hopefully have that settled by maybe next week.
Okay. So if no one else has anything on the logo, we can move on to Ram's topic about the press release.
Yeah, so there is a meeting that we've scheduled for the 29th, where we want to discuss exclusively about a few items that have to go to the press release. But then, generally speaking, the idea is folks do not have to wait for the meeting per se. You're more than welcome to add your comments to the document that I've shared a link to. If you have some specific inputs about some of the non-technical or non-engineering aspects of the whole release, I think the questions in the document are a great place to start. So we obviously welcome inputs from everybody. Doing this async is a lot easier than trying to schedule something because of time zones, because of vacations, because of different calendars. I know it's hard enough to get folks to meet once in a while for the working group meetings. I don't want to necessarily schedule more meetings and things, but obviously we're going to have a sync meeting. But if folks have some inputs, please feel free to add them to the doc. If you want to chat one-on-one, or if you want to make this something on Slack, feel free to do that as well. It's easier for folks to just work that way, I guess. So that was my thing for the PR document. And I guess one of the more pertinent questions that we're looking for an answer to is a release date. So I know we're all feeling that much more closer every other day, every other week to what we would like to call a final release. And I know there's been some discussions back and forth about what do we cut as the release, and that might not be as definite. But if we can provide like a date for our marketing and PR activities as to what the release date would be, it's easier to work backwards and get announcements queued up and things like that. So if folks have any semblance or any idea for what a rough date would be, that input is a top priority right now.
I guess we have just literally 3 stories, one of which technical we're currently doing. There are some minor problems. I think we'll manage to complete it this week, and then we need the documentation. So we're basically waiting for the install doc from Ioannis. I think he's on the call, and the other thing is probably going to be written up by the US colleagues. So I have the feeling that by the end of the week, we might be technically able to cut it. Just, it's an engineer's promise. Who knows what goes wrong. I don't know what Ioannis thinks about if he's going to be able to, how soon he's going to be able to be done with the installation docs.
Okay, so the talk itself does get you to a point that you get everything set up and installed, but apparently it's failing. The only thing that I really need to go through is the script provided and go ahead and jump in, make those changes, and hopefully I will have a working version which I can then depict on the documentation itself. Technically, I'm on leave as we speak because we have the Easter 1 week later. You know, you never have it at the same time. But I will try to put some time in tomorrow as well and make sure that wherever I am, you know, I get back to you on Slack and you have a clear understanding of the next steps and the time constraints.
Okay, cool. Just let us know. I guess we can pick it up from where you leave it. It's actually our Easter, Bulgarian Easter is Orthodox Easter, so it's it's a short week, which makes my promise, you know, less probable, but still. I guess when we're technically ready, when the milestone is met, I can just put the date in. If you think that's a good one. I don't know if people who want it to be cut immediately have not synced with anyone. I mean, technically, we're ready to cut it when the pipeline is when the milestone is met.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Ram, you said that it would be useful for marketing and PR to have a date to work back from. That doesn't seem all that useful to me if the date we give them is like tomorrow. How much time do they need? Or how much time would be like good for them? Do you have any sense?
Probably a couple of weeks would be a good estimate. I mean, I think it's the same as, you know, I think a marketer's promise is just the same as an engineer's promise at this. So give them 2 weeks, give them 4, give them 6. They'll have enough to do. But I guess a couple of weeks' runway is not too bad. I will reach out to those folks and speak to them as well, maybe later today. But yeah, I'll ping the team back to let them know where it stands from the marketing perspective.
And just to clarify though, like we can always make a GitHub release like before that. This is more around like when marketing and Linux Foundation will make their announcements and stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this was also discussed like a couple of weeks ago. Somebody brought it up asking if it's a blocker for any of the engineering work. It absolutely is not. You folks can continue to do your work, and then we can just, you know, pick up stuff and announce it on different like channels and things like that, independent of any engineering work that is ongoing.
Yeah, I'd say that the actual GitHub release doesn't need to be too tightly coupled to the marketing push, right? They should be close, but so yeah, I mean, whenever the GitHub release is ready, you know, I don't think you need to hold it up, but it would be nice to have soon, like, okay, this is when we're going to make the marketing push. Like that date, we want to have it set some weeks in advance.
So basically, if I'm hearing correctly, basically when we do the milestone, we'll cut the release and then we'll notify people and say that in 2 weeks they can make the release. And that will probably be a good frame, because then when they start making noise about the thing, the release will be there.
Yes.
It will be a bit embarrassing if it's not there.
Yeah.
So I guess when we're done with the release, we can just notify people. We can even hold off publishing so that it's closer to the actual marketing release.
Sure.
If it's a draft, it just stays there. We can click the button at any time.
Right.
So basically, I can, when we do the release, I can write the date plus 2 weeks in the document, if that's okay.
Ram, do you think that's enough time? That sounds, I think, good to me.
Yeah.
Cool.
That sounds good to me too. Let's pencil that and maybe work towards that.
All right.
Since the date is discussed as part of the marketing or communication end of things, I was going through important computer history events, and maybe would like to coincide with something that happened in the history of computing. There is a nice URL I can add to the chat. And when you think that it makes sense to go ahead, you can choose one of the dates that has some historic meaning.
Sure, why not? Do you want to add that to the Slack channel so that it persists longer than the meeting? Thanks, Ioannis.
Now I've done it. Okay. All right. I guess the last thing on our agenda is the cab call tomorrow. Ram again?
Yeah. So there is the monthly Cloud Foundry community call that we have to just discuss any general topics of interest to the community and also provide some updates. We've been having improved traction on this call since last year. So we have a lot of people who come in and discuss a bunch of different things about different aspects relating to Cloud Foundry, working groups, different projects. And so I thought it would be good to give them a preview of what Korifi is, what it can do, and basically try and install this on a GKE cluster live during the call. Just to see if it works and try and push a hello world, if not anything else. So I wanted to invite folks from this channel to be part of that call. If you can make it, the link to the call is available on the community calendar. So if folks are interested in being a part of that call, you're very, very welcome to be part of it, help answer questions, help me out if the demo crashes and burns, and do what demos are supposed to do. So yeah, that was my big announcement.
We were tinkering with scripts because we needed to install the GKE this past week. So we actually have a version of the install on kind script that installs the GKE. We can send to you if you want it.
That would be fabulous.
I think it might still have some slightly hard-coded things in it, but you can make your own tweaks.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that too.
There's also the pipeline scripts, because we recently moved most of the tests run against PRs to Concourse, so we had to install a cluster in GK. So we also have a version of it. So maybe I can also send you this one for what it's worth.
Okay.
Do you want me to paste a link in the chat, or maybe PM you in Slack? I don't know what you prefer.
Slack would be best. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do it.
Is it in the repo itself? Is it?
It's using some Terraform stuff that it's secret, but I guess I can PM the Terraform config to RAM if it's a personal message. Fine. I mean, it's not too secret by itself. There are no secrets in it, but we just wanted to make sure we don't disclose exactly how, exactly what resources we're allocating, stuff like that. But I could PM the public scripts and the configs which are private to RAM for some reference. That might help.
Yeah. That would be awesome. That's all I had. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Well, that's the end of our agenda. Unless anyone else has anything, I think we can call it. All right.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.